Hello there and welcome. This video will explain how to use some of Microsoft Excel's forecasting tools. We'll start by creating a forecast sheet. Then we'll look at using scenarios to explore different possibilities. And finally, we'll use Goal Seek to perform a what-if analysis on our values. If you have historical time-based data, you can use it to create a forecast. When you create a forecast, Excel creates a new worksheet that contains both a table of the historical and predicted values, as well as a chart that expresses this data. A forecast can help you predict things like future sales, inventory requirements, or consumer trends. So we're ready to create our forecast sheet, and on my Excel spreadsheet I have my dates and their corresponding values, whatever they may be, sales, costs. It just needs to be a date and a corresponding value. So what you're going to do is select that information, and on the data tab of the ribbon there is a forecast group here, and in the forecast group is the forecast sheet option. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a click. And here is the forecast. So the default forecast here is going to be a line. You could also switch that over to a column. I'm going to stick with the line. The blue line that we see here is the actual data that we have, the historical information that we're basing this off of. And then what we have over in orange are the forecasts themselves. So we could tell by the legend underneath what all of that means. The darker orange is the average forecast, and then we have a lower and an upper confidence sort of option as well. If the data was a little bit more uniform and just sort of a straight line without this big dip, then we would probably just have the one forecast option. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can predict, or you can set, when the forecast should end. So right now the forecast is ending just about a month or so later, but you can go ahead and expand that out. Just use the date picker and go forward, if you will, however far you would like to go to get that forecast into that future period. To go ahead and have this created, you'll use the Create button, and it will create a new sheet. So here's where we started, and here's the new sheet this process created. So this chart itself can be moved around. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag it so it's not blocking the data. And of course, it can be moved and resized. What we have here, what it created was, this starts off with this is our original data. This is the data that we use to create this forecast. Then what we have are the values that it has predicted. So I think from this point on are its predictions, right? And there you're able to maybe use this information, like we said earlier, to make predictions, things like sales, expenses, etc. So you can have Excel sort of help you forecast that. So you might be wondering what exactly a scenario is. A scenario is a set of values that Excel saves and can substitute automatically into your worksheet. You create and save these different groups of values as the scenarios, and then switch between them to view the results. You can generate a scenario summary report that will incorporate all the various scenarios that you've created into one location. So here's our example for our scenarios. What we have right here are some projections for some for this fictional company here. The fictional company is going to be looking at perhaps brushing up their furnishings. So that will affect their Q4 furnishing expense. The current furnishing expense there is $92,000. So we want, as we explore building the different scenarios, what we want to keep in mind is that you cannot undo your scenario. So I just sort of typed it out here to remind us that a scenario cannot be undone. So many of us rely on the undo feature, but if you switch to a scenario, you cannot undo it. So with that being said, you probably are going to want to save the current situation as a scenario. And that's the recommendation that we make, and that is the recommendation that we'll be following. So again, the challenge at hand is that we need to purchase furnishings. We have explored different options and we've come up with two viable solutions. One would be to perhaps purchase furnishings and keep our original furnishing, and then maybe one more would be to purchase new furnishings and sell some of the current furnishings. So we'll build those two scenarios and see how they affect the furnishing overall expenses, as well as the total expenses for Q4 and the total overall expenses. But like we recommended down here, the first thing we're going to do is save the current condition, this 92,000 in here as our first scenario. So what we'll do is create that by going over to the Data tab. And in the forecast group that we mentioned earlier, now we'll be working with the what if analysis. So I'm going to give that a click, and there is the scenario manager. What the scenario manager is used for is to create the scenarios, to switch between the scenarios, and then of course to generate that scenario summary report. So I'm going to give that a click. The dialog box that opens is our scenario manager. And we don't have any scenarios at this point, but we're about to change that. So we'll click the add. The scenario name, this is just so you can pick it out of the list. What is it that you want to change? I'm going to change the value in cell E3. Okay. And I'll get a chance to tell it what value I want to use in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. So I would just, at this point, it's giving me the value that is currently in that cell. So if we follow the recommendation to save the current conditions as the first scenario, then all we need to do is click on OK. So that is the first scenario that has been created. Now, let's add the two new scenarios. So I'm going to go ahead and click on add for a total of 3, right? But let's add. This one is going to be called purchase and keep existing. I'm still changing E3, and by the way, it keeps giving me E3 because that's where my cursor is. I'm going to click on OK. And let's say if I just flat out buy the new furniture and keep the old furniture, this would go up to 115,000. So click on OK. And again, these are my two scenarios. Let's go ahead and add that new one, add, which would be to purchase and sell existing. Again, just a little bit of an example here. If that's the case, then perhaps this would just be 110,000. Whoops. So click on OK, and then that is my third scenario, right? So great, I can go ahead and close this. They're created, and that's great. Now, there isn't really anything on the screen that will let me know that I have created scenarios. You would just maybe perhaps let people know that they have been created. And to switch between them, you go back into the what if analysis, into that scenario manager, and here they are. So again, the 92,000, that's the current one, right? So there's no need for me to really show that. But let me grab this, the first one that we actually, the new scenario here, which would be to purchase and keep existing. I just need to select it. I need to click on show, and it will change that, okay, value. And all of the calculations will update as a result of that. So the total to the right, so the line item overall total will be updated. The Q4 totals will be updated as well. But if I want to switch back to the existing or the current condition, I just select it and click on show. So if I did not have this scenario built, that's where that undo option, is not available. If I don't have a condition called current or existing, then I will not be able to get back to my original number. So that's why we strongly recommend that you do that. And then just to sort of, go through all of the options here, you select the scenario. This is now, if we sell it, we click on show and that value is substituted in there, right? And there you have it. So it is a nice way to be able to substitute values into your spreadsheet to see how they impact, the values, the formulas around them. Okay. Now, while I'm in here, just want to also point out that you are able to bring up that report. You can go ahead and click on the summary. And you can sort of give it what cells you would like to see impacted. So I'm just going to go with the recommendations here. That's the total for the furnishings, the total for Q4, which makes sense. That's sort of what's impacted mainly by these changes, these substituted values. I click on OK. And on a separate sheet, right? So here is where I was building and substituting my scenarios. It gave me what's called a scenario summary. The scenario summary I can expand and it will show me the different values and the different impacts that it will make, right? So here is the current one that I created. Here is the purchase and keep existing, purchase and sell existing, and they're all sort of in here and how they affect those totals. So kind of a nice way to be able to, just get a printout of the scenarios that you've created to be able to share. You can use Goal Seek on any of your formulas in your Excel worksheets. You'll use it to reach a specific result from that formula, and you can do so by changing just one of those inputs. So here we have an opportunity to use Goal Seek to make sure that a specific item in our budget is within a certain range. So for example here, we've decided or we've been tasked with getting our maintenance costs to be 30%. Right now they're a little bit high. This actually is a formula that is calculating the percentage. So it's taking the part, that's the maintenance amount of 301,000, and dividing it by the whole for this particular time frame, and that's how it's arriving at this 34.68%. Our goal, like I mentioned, is to get this down to about 30%. So we're going to use Goal Seek to see what that means, how we can get there. So of course you can just plug and chug numbers into this maintenance amount into cell C4, but using the Goal Seek will give us a cleaner, easier result. So I'm gonna sit in the cell D4 that has the formula in it. I'm gonna go over to the data tab, and once again in that forecast group I can go into what if analysis and find my Goal Seek. So I give that a click. Very small little dialog box, just needs a few pieces of information in order to make this work. And what that is the set cell. That's the formula, that's the cell that has the formula in it. So that is currently selected and in there already, so I'm going to leave that alone. The to value, that's when I say I want it to be, 30%. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my 30%. And then it needs to know what cell should be changed in order to reach this result. As I mentioned earlier, you are only able to change one of these inputs, so input values, so I'm going to just indicate that I would like to have it substitute different maintenance amount in there so that I can reach my goal. I'll click on OK. And through the analysis, it finds out, number one, if it's even possible. I guess in some situations, very complicated formulas, maybe there isn't a solution to get you where you need to be. But luckily for us, that is not a problem. So it's letting us know that it was able to find a solution. And it actually is now showing that solution, right? It hasn't permanently changed my spreadsheet, and if I click cancel here, it will put the original value back in there. But the end result is that it's able to get me to my goal, that 30% cost, 30% of my total overall cost, by reducing the maintenance to this amount. So once again, you can use GoalSeek to be able to reach a specific solution. And if you want to stick with this solution, just go ahead and click on OK, and it will change that value permanently there. You can always do an undo. You can also save close the spreadsheet without saving. But that's how the GoalSeek works. You start off in the cell that has the formula, you bring up your GoalSeek, you let it know through the dialog box, you know, what your end result should be, and hopefully it can come up with a solution for you. So definitely easier than just plugging and chugging different numbers in there to reach that 30%. So keep that GoalSeek in mind when it's time for you to hopefully reach a specific goal. And that wraps up our session for today. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.